Welcome back, guys. In this video we're going to learn how to send images to the database, image messages that is. Now we've just finished sending and retrieving text messages, so hopefully after this you'll see how it's very simple to convert that to now sending images. You'll remember that we've already done this before. We've sent images to the database in our settings activity to change our avatar. So it's quite simple, it's quite similar to that, the only main difference being that you also make an entry to the messages table in the database. So let's begin. The very first thing we need to do is to change our layout. In our activity chat.xml, we need to change this so that it has a dedicated button for the images. Now as you can see, I have an image here, an image button here called add, and it's a simple attach icon that we can click and then send the image. However, when I was testing this, it was giving a few issues, so I'm not going to use this. Instead, what I'll do is I'll use my edit text. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change the hint to type or long press for images. And just to drive the point home, I'll say long press here for images. Okay, type or long press here for images. Good. All right, next we will go to our chat activity and we'll now give that message box an on-click listener. So underneath the send.onClick listener, I'll say message box dot set on long click listener, actually not on click listener. We want them to long press. New on long click listener. We'll change this so it says return true. And then we can take that code that's in the settings activity. So in the settings activity, we were using the crop class which we got from GitHub to get the image, but we also had this code we've been using for testing that just opened the device's image folder, and that's exactly what we need here. So if you deleted that code, it's simply intent. You create a new intent. It's called image intent in this case. You set the type to images all, the star stands for all, and then you set the action to intent.action get content. And finally you start the activity for result, and this takes in intent.createChooser, which takes in image intent and a message, select an image, and then the other argument is an integer called pick. So I've initialized that up here. We can take a look. It's a private static final int pick, which is equals to 1. Simple as that. And that is all. That is everything that you'll do inside your message box. Very simple. Now what we need is to override the method, and we'll do that right above load messages. The method is called onActivity result. Okay, and the first thing in here is an if statement. If request code is equivalent to pick and sorry, that's result code. If request code is equivalent to pick and result code is equivalent to result OK, then the first thing we do is we create a URI object. I'll call it image URI is equals to data, which is the intent that's passed in through this method, dot get data. Then after this point, it really quite heavily follows the same process of the sending a text message. So in fact, just to drive that point home, I'm going to copy paste quite a bit. So the first thing we need is this references, so the current user ref and the recipient ref. I'll copy both of those, put them under the image URI, The next thing we need after this is a unique key for the image. So each image has to have a unique identifier that differentiates it from other images, and we did something similar for the text messages. So we'll just take that, the message key, we'll copy paste, and then after that we can create our storage reference. I'll call mine sref is equals to firebase storage.getInstance.getReference.child images. That's a new folder we'll create, images, or that will be created rather, .child, and now we can give our file a name, and the name will be the message key concatenated with .jpg. So that's the image type we'll use for all our images, and then we terminate. And then now we can simply put the file. So sref.putFile image URI, and that's it. You've sent your image to the database simply with just this code. Actually, with these 3 lines you sent the image. But what we need to do now is to tell the database, the messages table in particular, that there is an image to send to some recipient. So we'll put an add on complete listener, new on complete listener, and then we'll see whether it was successful with an if statement, if task dot is successful. And if it is successful, the first thing we want to do is to get a download URL. So string URL is equals to task dot get result dot get download URL dot to string. Just enter. Next, we need a message map. No need to type it though, because we already have the exact message map we need here. We will also need this message user map, so that, which if you remember, it puts the information in both our table and the recipient's table. And then finally we need to update the children, and then just to be thorough, we can even set the text to nothing, to blank. So what I'm trying to say is copy everything from here and paste it underneath that string URL. Okay, we'll just change a few things. The first thing we'll change is obviously type, which is now image, and then this message is now the URL. Current user ID stays the same. Now these are giving errors because we are using them from an inner class, so we just need to set them to be final. Okay, and everything else is fine. Everything else is, yes, everything is good. Okay, good. So that's all we'll do for our chat activity. Now we can move on to our single message.xml. Here it is. So now we need to add an image view into this XML. So I'll do it through the text part. So image view, and the width will be 30 dp. I'll tell you why in a bit. Why so small? The height will be wrap content, and then I will put scale type to be center crop, and I'll give it an ID of just image is fine. And now let's take a look at it in our design. Oh, and also I'll put it below Android layout, below the message text. Okay, so here's what we get after all that. We get this tiny little widget underneath everything. So the reason I've made it so small, 30 dp, is because if it's large, it'll shift around the other widgets, and I don't want that, especially since in most cases it won't actually have an image. So there's no need making something that will have to accommodate, that everything else will have to accommodate. Right, the next thing I want to do with it is to give it some margin. So all 10 dp. Yeah, so that it's not hugging the walls. Okay, and that should be everything in our XML. Next thing is to go to our message adapter and tell it that there's a new widget. So we'll do that in our message view holder class. We simply have to say public image view image, and we initialize that here. I'll duplicate this one and say image r.id dot image. Yes, that should be right. Okay, that's all we need to do in the message view holder class. Now we come to our onBind view holder and we do a little bit of logic. So right here where we've gotten the sender ID, underneath it I'm going to get the message type. So string type is equals to m.getType. Okay, and now that we have that, we can do an if statement to see what its value is. So here underneath the database reference, I'll say if type dot equals text. Then right at the bottom of all of this we have this folder dot message text dot set text. So I'm going to cut that and put it here. And then also I'm going to say holder dot image dot set visibility rather to invisible. Okay, the next thing I'll do is put an else clause. So there's no need for an else if, because if it's not text then it's obviously image. But of course later if you guys are extending this app, you might also want to do type of document or type of sound clip. That's when the else ifs will come in. So for now an else is fine, and within it we can now do pretty much the reverse of this. So holder dot message text, this time we're setting the message text to be invisible, and then we're using Picasso to set that image. Picasso.get.load m.getMessage.into holder dot image. Simple as that. And I will put a placeholder because definitely this will take some time. Placeholder r.drawable, literally anything is fine. If you have a specific one you can use that. I'm gonna use this cancel. And then very important, because we made it very small, we have to give it a reasonable size. So holder.image.getLayoutParams.width is equals to 600. You can play around with it and see what works best. But that's it, that's everything. Let's run it and see what happens.